Hi, Pop.
Hello.
Tell me, when and where were you born? What are the earliest memories you have as a young child?
Well, I was born in Russia, January 1, 1913. Exactly 85 years ago.
What are your earliest memories as a young child?
As a young child, I remember that we had a revolution there. When I was 5 years old, I remember the revolution that started then at that time. And we went through some very hard times. As a child, I can remember. We didn't have much to eat. Plus, we had pogroms, where the pogrom is where we had riots, and they came in and they were robbing we were Jewish people there, and they went after the Jews, where they slaughtered them, took everything, all the money and the valuables that they had, and they raped their women and children there. It was a terrible situation there.
What was your town called?
It was Cherkass. Cherkass, Kievsky Gubernia, which means, the Kievsky Gubernia means it's the state of Kiev. And Cherkass was one of the cities there. We were 100 miles away from Kiev, which is the capital of Kievsky Gubernia, the state of Kiev.
Tell me about your family, your mother, father, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and grandparents.
Well, my father was in the United States, and the whole family, we were 5 children, and my mother.
What were all the names?
And was Harry was the oldest. Gussie was my sister, which is next to the oldest. My sister Tilly. My brother is, and myself. We were 5 children. And we lived in a nice house, which my grandfather helped us survive while my father was in the United States. He left for the United States because he wasn't happy with the life that he had in Russia, and he wanted to better himself. And so he left for the United States. And he was here, and he got a job. He was a sample maker. And he got a job in one of these sweatshops that he worked in. And he earned enough money to come back to Russia. When he came back, well, when he left, he had 3 children. And when he came back the second time, my brother is, and then I was born. We were a year and a half apart. He was not happy the way things were going, so he left again for the United States. And during the second time that he left is when the revolution broke out, and the World War I broke out, and there was no way to communicate or get together. And so we were separated for many years. And then my brother Harry, the oldest, was ready, he had to register for the army. And my mother didn't want him to go to the army because it was suicide there. And so we decided that we're going to try to go to America during the revolution.
How old was your brother when he went into the army?
He was 16.
Just for the rep, Pop, what was your father's name?
Benjamin Fine.
And your mother?
Sarah Fine.
And who did you live with when you were in Russia?
we had our own house. My mother had like a stand in the marketplace where she used to sell little novelties there. And she tried to, make a living. We had a lot of help from my grandfather.
Can you tell me about him?
He was the undertaker of the Jewish community, Jewish cemetery. And that was his job there. And he helped us out a lot, plus my aunts. My grandfather had, that is, my father had 3 sisters.
What was your grandfather's name?
Well, they called him Sam, but Schmalitzy, that was his name.
What kind of education did you and your brothers and sisters get at this time in Russia?
My sisters had good education. My oldest brother, and my sisters had good education. They went to the grammar school and the high school there. They had a good education. My brother and I, we didn't even. My brother started Cheder, it's a Jewish religious school. I didn't start it yet. I wasn't of age or whatever it was, I wasn't started yet.
Okay, you were talking about your aunts. What were their names and what was the role that they played in your life?
My aunts were Aunt Gussie, and Bubble, and Giese. That was the Russian Jewish names. And they were very good to us. It just so happened that their husbands did very well. And they made sure that that my brothers and sisters went to the same school as their children did, and gave them the same education that their children had.
What kind of business were your uncles in?
They were in the shoe business. They were in the shoe business, and they also were in the manufacturing business of Army uniforms. And during the war, the revolution, they made a lot of money with the Army, selling them uniforms and all that. So they were considered wealthy people.
As a child, were you aware of the onset of the revolution?
No, I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. But I remember growing up that we lived right near the city hall there, and they had all these speeches there, about the revolution and fellow workers and all that stuff. And I used to hear the speeches all the time. I used to repeat the speeches that they made from hearing them talk. I used to go in the house and make the same speech.
Even though you are now and have been for a long time a U.S. citizen, you were an immigrant at a young age. Can you tell me what the conditions were and what caused you to leave your homeland of Russia? Could you tell us your story?
Well, it was a very hard life. It was people couldn't make a living. They lived in poverty, and they couldn't. It was hard to put bread on the table. People were starving of hunger, and some people were more fortunate than others, but it was very, very hard times. It was hard times.
What did you do during the day as a child if you weren't in school?
Well, we had a big yard, a farm, and we all used to play in the yard. And we had a beautiful house with a big garden. And as a child, I remember playing in the yard all the time. We were out there.
Now about your flight to America, your coming to America, how did that whole thing start?
Well, it came time that my brother Harry had to register for the Army. And it was like suicide. And so we decided that if we could get across Russia, across the border, we would have a chance to get into Russia, to the United States. And so we got all the information how to go about it. And we were in Russia, and we had to go to Bessarabia, which is the end of, at that time it was the end of Russia.
Now, your father was in the United States?
Yeah, he was in the United States. There was no way we could, the mail or anything, we couldn't get that. So the idea was to get to Bessarabia, and in Bessarabia, there was a border there. We can get there, cross the border. It was a lake like, and if we could cross the lake, we would be in Bessarabia. From there, we'd have a chance to travel to, and where we wanted to go, we had to go to, from Bessarabia, we had to go to Romania. That was the main focal point, was Romania. And so we had to have the only currency that they would recognize. The Russian money didn't mean anything. So it was silver and gold, which was the real thing. But you could try, pay off with silver and gold. And so we got a direction we had to get to the border of Bessarabia. And we had to take certain trains. And so what we did, we started out, we had the tickets and all, you couldn't get on the train because in every station, train station, you saw it was filled with military and they were sleeping on the floors, on the bench. You could get nowhere.
And you weren't allowed to leave?
We weren't allowed to leave. So we started out. And the only place we could get is sometimes on the roof of the train, which we did. We used to climb up on the roof, and we were all riding on the roof, and the soldiers were sleeping all over the place and all. Until we got to the border.
On that train ride, you always told the story about your lucky hat.
My hat. I had a good hat. And as I was sitting on the roof, the hat blew off, and I was going after it, and my mother grabbed me. That was a dangerous thing, but I didn't know. I was going after that hat. And it was a terrible ride. It was, you couldn't get food, and you couldn't go to the bathrooms, you couldn't get washed up. It was an awful place. And so we made it to the border. Now when we got to the border, we made a connection. See, all this here, doing the connections, is the underground, you know what I mean? And we were connected with a group, with a leader or whatever it was, and he had the connections with the underground from step to step, and one guy would go up to this point and turn you over to the next guy. They had like a chain of commands. And till we got to the place where we have to cross the border. We didn't eat. We had no food. But when we got to this place, it was a farm with prunes where they, and all we ate was prunes. I'll tell you, I can remember those bags of prunes. And we were eating prunes. And we joined the movement. What shall I tell you? But anyway, and head of that group that took you across the border was a woman. She must be 6 foot tall. Never forget her. She wore the most beautiful black leather jacket. And she had a gun around her, and she was in charge. And so they were ready, you know, taking us over. Now what they used to do is take you over at night, so that, you know, with the boat nobody would see you steal the border. They call it stealing the border. And so they had this woman, she was in charge, and she would load up a boat, take you across, and then later on they'd take another boat, take you across. But it was dark, but these people knew their way, you know. So when they took the first boat to go across was my brother and I, my mother, and another woman. Her name was Kartofler. Kartofler. That means potato in Russian. Anyway, that was her nickname. And so they took the 4 of us in the boat. And she had a little boy that she was nursing. He was 1 year old. They left the little baby with the husband and her mother, figuring they were on the next trip. They took us across, and they put us into the forest, in the woods there. And they said that it's getting a little too light. They don't know whether they'll be able to bring over the next boat, you know, with the baby, so the mother could nurse her. If not, they'll have to bring her over the next night. When they told that to the woman, she went into convulsions in the woods. And they said they mightn't bring him over tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Well, this woman went into convulsions, and she was and she passed out she passed out. And my mother had my brother and I tied around, you know, holding tight. And it's in the woods, and you hear animals walking. It was a very frightening situation. We were just laying there, but my mother, you know, she was the one that was carrying the big burden. And then on top of that, this woman went into convulsions, you know. Terrible thing. But we had to lay there saying that they'd bring him over tomorrow. And so we waited there, and after a couple hours, we hear, psst, psst. They were looking for us. So we heard people walking, psst, psst. And so we motioned, you know, we didn't motion, but we made, we're here. And they came over that night, that same night, you know. In the meantime, dawn is breaking already, you know, you see a little light. And so when they brought over everybody, the guide says, "You'll follow me." And we said, "Okay, we'll follow you." And he's taking us out. And he's taking us out to the road. And as we get close to the road, he says, "This is the road which you have to go down this." And he stays this, and he bends down, and he turns around and starts running back. He started to run back because he didn't want to get caught. He says, "Now you're on your own."
In Bessarabia.
in Bessarabia. And we keep walking through the forest and we hit the main road. Now when we hit the main road, dawn is just starting to break. And the farmers are coming in, or going out with their wagons. And we're going into town, you know. And they look at us and they said, oh, they're gonna get you. Why? Because as we're coming into town, on the road on both sides, up on the mountain, there's soldiers looking down to watching the road, you know, who's stealing the border. They knew what it was. We see the guards up there, but evidently they must have been paid off. Because we're walking. And we're walking, and we hit the first house. The first house. And we tell them we just came from Russia and we're hungry and we're this and that. And this woman, she felt so sorry for us. She started to feed us and give us food that we didn't see. We didn't see it for the longest time. We didn't see food like that. And so she's feeding us and taking care of us. And we were 4, 5, 6. We were 6. And they were 2, they were 4. So it was 10 people. And this woman is feeding us and all of a sudden a neighbor walks in. And she says to her, what are you doing? You know that they'll kill you if they catch you, that you're taking care of refugees, they'll kill you near the border. You weren't allowed to help the refugees.
Did you sleep and stay at her home?
Huh?
Did you sleep and stay at her home?
No, we didn't. We just crossed the border and we were hungry. We were out in the woods. So we hit the first house and we told them, do they have anything to eat? Anyway, she fed us. But she said, you gotta go. So we said, where's the next town where some Jewish people are? Because they told us to go to a town where the Jewish people are, and the Jewish people have synagogues there that they'll help you. So she said the next town is like 10 miles away. See, the further you get away from the border, the safer you are. So we had to go. So we told her to get us a horse and wagon, which she did. She got us a horse and wagon, and he took us away. Took us into this little town, you know. That was in the afternoon. Took us into this little town.
Did you pay them?
Huh?
Did you have to pay them?
Oh, sure. See, we had the silver and the gold. Uncle Iz and I had it all tied around our waistband. So anytime they needed money, they went to us. And they paid them. So anyway,
How old were you?
I think I was 7 years old. It was in 1922. 1922 that we got here. We left Russia in 1921. 1921. So I was about 7 years old. Anyway, we got to this little town with this guy. He had hay covering us up, you know. They covered us up with hay so nobody would see it. We got to this little town and we're going to this, we told them that we wanted a Jewish family. And he took us to a Jewish family. And she said she'll take the women and the children, but not the men.
And that was who, Harry?
Harry and another man. Now the reason they wouldn't take the men is because they were of age for the war. And they were deserters. So they were afraid to play around with the deserters. She says, the only thing you could do is take him to the synagogue. Maybe they could do something for him. Took him to the synagogue, and they said, yeah, they can stay. You're allowed to come in and pray. No matter who you are, this is a house of worship, you know. At night, you want to stay here and sleep in the attic, you know, the top end. It's up to you. Do whatever you want to do. It's exactly what they did. So we stayed over at night. See, we didn't travel at night. But during the day, the next early morning, we got up and we took another horse and wagon. You know, and he took us to the next town and to the next town. And that's the way we kept on going until we got to a bigger town, and Uncle Harry, 16 or 17 years old, and this other man, they were able to go out and get jobs. Got jobs in a factory somewhere where they were able to work, and we notified my father. See, other than that, there was no communication.
What was he doing in the United States at that
He
time?
was working. He was a sample maker. And so we wrote to my father. We sent him a telegram, and he sent us some money. See, we couldn't get money, but he sent us money. And when we got the money, we were able to travel. And we got into Bucharest. When we got into Bucharest, there was a lot of refugees there waiting for visas. See, from Bucharest to America, you had to get a visa. It took a year to get a visa.
So you were in Romania for a year.
We were in Romania for a year, but we already had money, and we were in good shape, and there were a lot of people waiting for their visas, and all they did is have parties.
So what did you do for that year?
I'm telling you, they used to, we used to have parties all the time. A lot of cousins that we met there, and strangers, and we were waiting for visas. Money was coming in. My father was sending us money. We were in good shape. Waiting for finally we got the visa. Now once we got the visa, we had to go from Bucharest, we went to Hamburg, Germany. But we got into Hamburg, Germany, we crossed the channel to Liverpool. From Hamburg, we went to Liverpool, you know, by boat. It was the wildest boat ride we ever. Uncle Liz and I were the only ones in the dining room. There wasn't a living soul in the dining room. And so they had this bananas on the table. We never saw bananas. We didn't know what it was. And so we started to eat the bananas the way they were. The guy came over and said, oh, wait. He peeled the banana for us. And he showed us how to eat the banana. We never saw a banana. But that boat was rocking like you wouldn't believe. I'm telling you. Uncle Liz and I were the only two people in that dining room.
Where was everybody else?
They were sick. They were throwing up and they were sick. That was the wildest ride. And then when we got into, then we took a luxurious liner. It was a cruise ship. We didn't go and steer it, you know. It was a beautiful liner. And it landed in Gloucester, New Jersey. And the reason for that is we didn't want to go to New York because we had, what they call it, a sore on the head, you know, and they were very fussy about the sores, you know. And so my brother Harry thought they weren't going to let us in. So we had to go through a certain process where we lost all our hair so they could get to the source, which was a nothing thing, but he was going out of his mind because he thought they wouldn't let us into the United States. They turned us down for that reason. But nothing happened there. And we had a beautiful, luxurious ride on the luxury ship. And we came to the United States.
About how many other people came from Russia to the United States in the same situations that you were in?
Not many. Not many. They see during the revolution, during the war, the people couldn't travel. We just took a lot of chances, and we were very fortunate that my father was in a position to send us all that money, you know, to be able to come here.
Did you ever come close to being caught?
Caught? No. We were very lucky. We were very lucky. But, you know, we had to go underway. We couldn't go through a legitimate way.
So what was your life like when you got here? You landed in New Jersey. What happened then?
When we landed in New Jersey, my father lived with his aunt.
What was her name?
My father lived with his aunt, Mima Bela. And Mima Bela had Aaron and Becky and Lena and Sarah. Mima Bela had 4 children. 4 children. She had a big house on 7th and Paris. And my father lived with her.
In Philadelphia?
Yeah. And she, the Mima Bela had 4 children. And and one, Lena, she was a daughter, one of the daughters, and she had a son, Charlie, who became a musician, and he played for the Philadelphia Orchestra. Yeah, he was an accomplished musician. But he lived a life, well, I don't want to get into that.
So where did you live when you came here?
Well, when we came here, my father looked around for a house. He wanted to buy a house with a store. So instead of working out, he wanted to open up a tailor shop with a cleaning and dyeing stuff and all that. And he shopped around, and we bought a house at Mervine and Burke's in Philadelphia.
Nice place?
Nice house, a big house, big.
At this time, how much did the houses cost?
I think my father paid $10,000. So it wasn't cheap, but $10,000 he paid for that house.
How good was your English?
No good.
Oh, good. So what did you do? What was your education like?
Well, I used to talk, I talked Jewish. Jewish and Russian, that's what we talked. Fluent Russian. My sisters and brothers, they were educated in Russian. So they spoke fluently, and they were educated now. They were good students, by the way. Uncle Liz and I, we never made it, you know, because we were too young.
So did you go to school when you got here?
Oh, sure, they signed us up right away. They put me in the 1st grade.
How long did it take you until you could speak English fluently?
Didn't take me long. It didn't take long. What happened was that we had it was the immigration, and there were some people that came before us, you know. And then people started coming after us. And so there were quite a few, they called them greenhorns. And those days they didn't call you a refugee or something. They call them greenhorns. So, they had quite a few greenhorns in the schools, and we became friendly, And we used to travel with our crowd, people that came over. It was more or less mixed, like. But after a while, a couple of years, we went right in.
How about your father's tailor shop? Was it successful?
He always made a nice living there.
And did your brother Harry go into work with him?
Well, no. My brother got a job in a wholesale dry goods place. Markowitz Brothers. And my sisters also got some kind of jobs. And they started to go to night school. They went to night school. And they learned English, reading, writing, and all that. And then they got jobs.
What about, America being the land of opportunity?
It was the most wonderful thing that could happen to us. It was hard to believe that the kind of life that we had here compared to what we left. It was, you had to kiss the ground you're walking on. It was really a land of opportunities.
What are your memories? Like when you think back now to being a small child here, even as a young teenager in this country, what do you remember?
You mean growing up?
Just a personal story, something that you remember that sticks out in your mind.
Something that sticks out in my mind, you mean what I left Russia about Russia?
In the United States as a young man.
I tell you, from what I can remember, the difference that I can compare here and there, it's just unbelievable. You can't believe that you can have a life like this here, compared to what I left. It was just a paradise.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of friends outside of your family who you remain in the United States? Who you remain in touch with?
We made friends. I made a lot of friends. Still got them.
Like who?
Well, the Strausses, they were younger friends. A lot of friends I lost. Most of them. I lost some of my best friends when they were 50 years old. And don't forget, now we're 85. So we're talking about 35 years ago. But these are my friends I grew up with. But they died young.
What did you do? How far did you go in school?
That's my biggest regret. We had a depression here. And we went in business, and we went to in the dry cleaning business. And we went bankrupt. The whole family. It was a family thing. And so it just so happened when I graduated, I was in high school. We went broke. And we had a plant, and we thought we were big shots, but we were wiped out. And so we all went to work. Uncle Liz got a job in a grocery place. I got a job at a cleaner, with a cleaning gear. And then I went to work for my father, where we had a truck, and I went around collecting cleaning things and delivering it. And then I was doing well, so Uncle Harry did the same thing. And then we got a truck for Uncle Liz. And then I had a boyfriend that quit school, and so I said, okay, we'll get a truck for you, and you go do the same thing. We had five trucks going out to different places,
What was the company called?
Be Fine and Company. Be Fine. The Schwarzer was a Schwarzer neighbor. They used to see my father and said, be fine. Be fine. That was the big thing. said, be fine. So we were known for be fine.
Did your grandfather or any of your relatives in Russia ever come over?
Yeah, my grandfather came over. My grandfather came over here when he was in the late 70s.
What do you remember about him?
He was a great guy. You know, he was like a father. And he took care of us as much as he could, you know. And my aunts helped out and all that. But he was a big help. He was a very big help. And he came over here, and he and my mother had the best relationship. They used to sit down, and every night, what we're going to buy for tomorrow, and then he used to go get up 5 in the morning and pray. And then when dawn broke, the light came, he went to the synagogue. And he was there till after the services. And after the services, he used to go to the market on Marshall Street to shop. And by 8:30, 9 o'clock, or 8 o'clock, he was back from the market. And there was the breakfast on the table. When everybody got up, there was the breakfast.
Did your grandfather live with you?
Yeah. He lived with us until my mother died.
Okay. So tell me, how was the entire thing of immigrating, leaving Russia and coming to the United States, how did that affect your life as a whole, and how did it change your life?
Well, I was young, so I got into the spirit of baseball, and I loved sports, and I used to play all the sports. In school, I became captain. I became chairman of my class. You know, I really went right in. I was young, and I just went right in with it, and I loved it. And I was good at school, but I never gave it a chance. And I don't know who to blame, but that's my biggest regret, that I didn't get a higher education. And I realized it more as time went on, you know.
Have you ever been back to Russia since?
Oh yeah, I went back to Russia twice, and I wanted to get back to Cherkasy, but it was restricted area, and I couldn't. And the nearest I could get, or the closest I could get, was to Moscow, Leningrad, and all these big cities, but I couldn't get to Kiev.
Was Russia much different from how you remembered it?
I think it was worse. It was bad. It was so bad there. You know, I was never in those cities that I went to visit. Moscow, Leningrad, and all these cities, I never was there. You know, as a child, I was not there. But it was so sad. You could see it was modern. You know, they never modernized it. They never developed it. All they took care of it was the military. The military there, they were like, every soldier was like a general. They took care of the military, and that's all they did.
What are your feelings now about letting others, immigrants, come into the United States?
Well, I tell you, I think this is a land of opportunity without a question of a doubt. So far, we've let in a lot of immigrants, and we weren't hurt by it. The immigrants is what made it. Immigration is what made America. I'm a great believer of that.
Thanks, Poppy.